Hi there, this is Bib Hubbard. Sorry for the delay. We did not have internet here in Alexandria, so apologies for that little mishap. And now we're on my hotspot. So let's hope Apple will deliver, and we can get through this presentation. So for those of you who just joined, really quickly, our live stream. I'm Bib Hubbard, President and founder of Learning Heroes. Thrilled to be with the Edmodo community tonight. Again, apologies for our technology glitch. But we're here to share with you Parents 2018, and we're super excited because we just released this research report today. So this community is the very first community to get access to this data. We are incredibly eager to hear from you as the educator community. We want your questions, feedback, insights. Again, we're just rolling this out, so we're eager to hear from folks about what is useful and what is actionable. So now we'll go ahead and dive in. Just going to pull up the PowerPoint and hopefully we don't crash again. Great, thank you, Terrence. So today we'll do a couple things. As I mentioned, we'll reveal the insights from our two national polls, one of teachers and one of parents. And then my colleague, Wendy Lopez-Aflito, is also on the line. She is going to share with you best practices on communicating with parents, and also is going to walk you through a new digital tool that we've created for parents and teachers called the Readiness Check. So before getting into the data, a little bit of context about Learning Heroes. So I founded Learning Heroes about 4 years ago to inform and equip parents to best help their children's educational success. And when I started, I wanted to understand parents. I'm a parent, but parents are not monolithic. So I looked around and found that there was not a lot of research on parent mindsets, how they think, they feel, they talk, they prioritize their children's education. And so we went upon this journey and decided to prioritize parents and listening to parents. And so as you can see from this slide, we've conducted more than 100 focus groups, dozens of in-depth interviews, meaning one-on-one conversations with different actors in a child's life. Educationally, we've done 10 national quantitative surveys, mostly of parents, but now this year with teachers. Ethnography sessions where we go into people's homes, we sit with them and learn from them. Dozens of our tools have been tested, and importantly, as you can see, we've covered 25 states, so very geographically representative, and we also prioritize making sure that we are listening to low-income parents and parents of color in particular. So with that, as the backdrop, and sitting on an unprecedented amount of research, this year we wanted to dig into what we call the disconnect. And in 2016, we revealed that 9 out of 10 parents, and this is regardless of race, income, geography, education levels, 9 out of 10 parents believe that their child's at or above grade level in both reading and math. And you as educators know better than anyone that that is closer to 39%, 40% at best. And for our children of color, and the numbers are much worse. And so we believe that parents deserve a complete and accurate picture so that they can best help their child's educational success. So for us, this has become mission critical. So for this year, we wanted to consider 2 key explorations. One, are there certain characteristics or behaviors, so thinking about behavior science when it comes to parents, that define parent mindsets and their ability to gain that accurate picture? And then importantly, what is the reality for teachers in making sure parents have that accurate picture? So these are the 2 kind of framing questions that we had going into the research. And methodologically, we did an incredible amount of deep research. So qualitatively, you can see here, we did 80 sessions, which was comprised of 12 parent focus groups in both English and in Spanish. 24 parent-child dyads. That means we talked to parents and with their children. That was fascinating. We also talked to guidance counselors, principals, and as you can see, 28 teachers individually from across 6 different cities, as you can see below. And we took all of that rich qualitative data and did two national polls, one of parents and one of teachers. So you can see here more than 1,700 parents responded to our online poll, also conducted in English and in Spanish. And we had more than 1,000 teachers respond. So, what does all this mean? And before we dive into just this year's research, we wanted to give a little bit of context based on a lot of our previous research. So, over the past 3 years, just getting into the heads of parents and really creating some context for you. So, as you can see here, what we call the disconnect, the fact that parents have a belief that their child's at or above grade level, which we know to not be the case at that level. Year over year, in 2016, it was 90% for math, 2017, 91%, 2018, 88%. So parents are pretty consistently in this space where they truly believe that their child's at or above grade level in both reading and math. And you can see the lighter shade bars are the NAEP data. We just wanted to make some comparisons. And again, you as educators actually know this better than the national data. And importantly, parents have high expectations, especially parents of color. College is a priority. 80% of parents say it's absolutely essential or very important for their child to get a 2 or a 4-year degree. And parents remain confident. 82%, that's a huge number of parents are extremely or very confident that they have a clear understanding of how well their child is achieving academically. But we also wanted to know what keeps parents up at night. And parents have different worries. So they prioritize, as you can see here, they're worried about their kids' emotional well being, their happiness above and beyond anything. Peer pressure, bullying, internet and social media safety is hugely important to parents and keeps them, tops their concerns. They care deeply about the academics. That this it doesn't mean that they're not important. It just means they don't worry as much when you force them to make some of these choices. And then interestingly, when it comes to teachers, as we ask teachers for the first time, what do they worry about? What keeps them up at night? It is about the challenges that their students face at home, poverty, food insecurity, things of that nature, and also receiving academic support from parents and guardians. So top of mind for teachers is around what's happening at home in terms of that academic support. So let's shift gears a little bit and go into some of the new data, what we learned, parent perceptions, drive involvement. And what we mean by that, as we looked across all of the responses, it was really fascinating for us to see that, we know parents aren't monolithic. So there were 4 parenting styles, 4 segments that emerged. And as you can see here, they kind of fell evenly they kind of fell evenly throughout those 4 different buckets. And so this is not a stereotype. It's not a label, but these are different parenting styles. Parents do show up differently. They get involved in different ways. Their thresholds for involvement are different. Their expectations are a bit different. So we'll go into some of those differences now. So our first segment, the AOKs, we call them, 25% of parents we surveyed fall into this category. As you can see here, they view their child as independent and academic achievers. They're confident of their child's performance in the classroom, and they actually do pay attention to end-of-year state tests in addition to the report card grades. They're looking at lots of different kinds of data. These parents are more likely to have an advanced degree. And they are open to information, but just need a light touch from teachers because their kids are probably the ones who are performing at grade level and on track. Our other category here, which is, and these parents are more likely to have an accurate picture, as you can see, we call them problem solvers. That's 22% of our segments. And for them, they report their child as distracted, anxious, with social emotional difficulties. They actually know that their child is struggling, and they're deeply engaged. They care about helping that child bridge those gaps. You can see a quarter of them say their child has an IEP. They perceive their own achievement as middle of the road, but they're actively communicating with teachers and very hands-on. And as we go to our other segments, these two segments are less likely to have an accurate picture. So we have the acceptors, which is 30%, the biggest segment that we have here. And they perceive their child to be respectful and independent, and really stress independence in particular. And they worry less in general about their child's academics. They believe their child's doing fine. In terms of their own educational experience, few enjoyed school, and they are less likely to prioritize college. And in terms of their engagement levels, they're less involved, and they're a bit skeptical of information that gets put in front of them that sort of doesn't square up with their own beliefs and in interpretations of how their child is doing. And then the last segment are the protectors, 23%. Their perceived behavior of their children is their child seems social and self-motivated, but they might have a false sense of security about their child's achievement. They are more likely to rely on report cards. They did enjoy school, had a good experience. They're deeply involved, have very high expectations. They worry a lot, and the information when we present them with other data in some scenarios I'll show you in a moment, it does get their attention. So what does all of this mean in terms of how parents involved and engaged? We see that through those different segments, there are different thresholds for involvement with parents, but in general, we asked parents, what is your ideal amount, how involved would you like to be ideally on a scale of 1 to 10? And we saw that 81% of parents said, I'd ideally like to be involved deeply, between 8 and 10, which is a high level of involvement. Whereas teachers said, yep, ideal amount of involvement for parents is at that very end of that top end of that scale, between 8 and 10. And then we asked parents, so how involved are you actually? And the percentage of parents who said they're actually involved in that upper echelon between 8 and 10 drops to 67%. And then interestingly, when we asked teachers, how involved do you think parents are actually? That 80% for teachers who said ideally they'd love to see parents involved in that range of 8 to 10. Only 28% of teachers report that the parents in their classrooms for their students are involved at that high end between 8 and 10. So a pretty big dip there. And then we also, given sort of the involvement is critical in all of this, we asked parents, how are you involved in your child's education? And out of all of these factors, the parent-teacher conference, tops the list, 66%, as well as, accessing their child's grades through an online portal. And interestingly, for middle school, you can see over to the right, the reason that 65% is in green means it's statistically significantly higher than the elementary school. So we do hear from parents qualitatively that as the child gets older, there is greater reliance on that portal because they have less involvement with their teachers. So that sort of becomes their only channel of information. So they do tend to use that portal more frequently. But you can see here, communicated with the child's teacher outside of a parent-teacher conference, only half of parents are taking that type of action. And then when we asked teachers, we said, hey, how important is it to be involved? And you saw the ideal involvement is deeply involved. And, why is that the case? Well, 78% of teachers, a huge number of teachers, believe students whose parents regularly communicate with them tend to do better academically than students whose parents do not. And again, we saw only 55% of parents report that they are having those ongoing conversations with teachers outside of that parent-teacher conference. So as we sort of take a step, hit a little pause button here and think about, okay, what does all this mean and what's going on here? We found that the report cards really sit at the center of this, of this disconnect as we've defined it, where parents, believe that their child is at or above grade level when we know 90% of our students are not, and hopefully we'll get them there. But what we found is when we asked parents, and then I'm going to show you teachers in a moment, we gave them 8 ways of understanding their child's achievement, and we forced them to make a choice. So we call this a max diff exercise. So the numbers 16.9, 16.7, those rankings are actually really important because that sort of emphasizes how important these particular measures are. And you can see grades are by far and away the number one way parents are understanding their child's achievement. Second, whether or not their child struggles with homework, something that they can see every day, and then the graded work and tests, again, something that they have access to. So that's what they're relying on when it comes to understanding their child's achievement. And we did hear, especially from Hispanic families, that the child's mood and body language plays a pretty prominent role in understanding in sort of understanding how their child's achieving. But when we ask teachers, really interestingly, what we see is that report card falls to number 3. So it is not number 1, it is number 3. And in fact, when you pay attention again to those numbers on the right, regular communication with the teacher, as we just heard previously, 21.6, that is a giant number in this kind of exercise, is the teacher's number 1 way of understanding achievement for a student. And then graded work and quizzes, and then that report card grade. So a pretty big difference we're seeing here. Now, there is one very similar place where teachers and parents line up, and that's with the results from the annual state tests. Neither parents nor teachers, when you force them to prioritize, will prioritize the annual state tests as a place to turn to understand if a child is achieving. And when we dive in more deeply with parents around report card grades and just sort of getting a deeper understanding, 67% of parents indicate their children typically gets all A's or mostly A's and B's on their report cards. That's a pretty giant number. And even more giant, 84% believe A's or B's indicate that the child is doing the work expected of them at their current grade. So if they're getting A's and B's, clearly they are performing at grade level. So we start to see why parents believe their child's at or above grade level. If they're getting A's and B's, and that means they're on grade level, then yep, they're at or above grade level. So parents are actually pretty spot on with what's in front of them and the way that they're defining that report card. Yet when we talk to teachers say good grades equal mastery plus effort plus progress. So you can see here, yes, achievement, mastery of concepts is part of the report card, but so is progress over that grading period, participation, engagement in class, and that effort put forward. In fact, almost half of teachers agree that the report card grades measure effort more than achievement. So here, a pretty big definitional disconnect between parents and teachers. And you can see here, 64% of teachers agree that parents focus too much on report card grades alone. And when we ask teachers about their engagement and involvement, teachers are most likely to contact parents about behavior. So students is misbehaving in class. You can see here 82% be very likely to reach out to a parent if that's the case. And then obviously some of these academic pieces also are fairly high, especially in the elementary school. Those green numbers for elementary school indicate teachers in elementary school are much more likely to reach out to parents over those middle school teachers. But also an interesting observation is there isn't one of these areas of engagement where more than 50 or even 50%, half of teachers can say that they will definitely reach out to parents. So we found that pretty interesting as well. And we asked teachers about, do they have the support, the training to communicate difficult information? And we specifically said difficult information. So this isn't just sort of ongoing communications. It was very tailored to like having that tough conversation, which we know is tricky. And not even half of teachers said that they get some sort of formal training. So less than half of teachers are getting some sort of formal training for this kind of those kind of tough conversations. And then we asked, why for teachers do they find it difficult to talk to parents? And the two reasons that really you can see here popped out by far and away, parents blame the teacher when their child isn't performing at grade level. And parents might not believe the teacher, especially if the information contrasts with the parent is seeing at home. And we know that kids are different at home than they are at school. We heard that from those parent-child dyads. So we know that kids are putting on the best face at home because they don't want to suffer consequences. So we can sort of see why teachers might believe or experience some of these reasons. And interesting for us is that parents trust teachers the most, yet here are teachers who fear having these conversations. And how do we find ways to help those conversations happen in more productive, positive ways? So some really good news, we think, as we did, we pressure test giving parents some additional information and found that the disconnect is it is pretty solvable. So we gave parents this paragraph here, which is all about the 9 in 10 parents who believe their child's at or above grade level in reading and math. Yet we mentioned that only 39% of teachers say their students start the school year prepared for grade level work. So after parents are exposed to this paragraph, we then ask them again, how confident are you that you have a clear picture of how your child is doing academically? And you can see that 82%, that very big number at the beginning of the survey, drops to 65% after hearing that. So parents say, if 39% of teachers believe those their students are showing up prepared for grade level work, and I trust teachers, maybe I need to think to have another, take a second thought at it. And you can see over to the right with some of our demographic breakdowns, consistently there is sort of this drop in confidence after hearing that. And then we pushed a little further and we wanted to give parents some scenarios. So we split the sample, as we call it. So half of parents received one scenario and the other half of the parents in our poll received another scenario. So the first scenario, we told parents, if your child receives a B in math and doesn't meet state expectations on the state test in math, if that's happening for your child, then we ask them, do you think your child's at, above, or below grade level in math? And that 88% from the very beginning of the survey goes to 61% of parents. So quite a few parents drop off thinking, hey, if that's happening for my kid, then my child is probably not at or above grade level, and I need to sort of figure this out. And then we ask the other half of the survey respondents, if your child receives a B in math, doesn't meet state expectations on the state test in math, and your child's school received an overall performance rating of a C, is your child performing at, above, or below grade level? And we heard only 52% of parents said my child's achieving above, at or above grade level. So just providing a very simple amount of information about their child. We made it really personal on purpose. We see some movement and we see that parents are open to receiving information about their child. And, every parent wants to be their child's best advocate. And so we feel like parents deserve to have more information than the report card grades, which are a critical, important part of that student's story. But can we give some of this other kind of data so that parents can have a more clear picture? So we were really encouraged by this stat and this finding, and eager to sort of close out for the moment and take questions or comments from all of you. So one question we just got is, for report cards and grading, were you able to differentiate schools who do mastery-based grading versus schools who center grading among other things like turning in work participation? Is there a difference in how parents, teachers view those? So that's a great question, and we qualitatively got at this quite a bit. So some of the standards-based report cards are really helpful and parents appreciate them, and some are done in a way that are not helpful and they're pretty confusing. So we talked to some parents in New Hampshire in particular, and they on their child's report card in elementary school in particular, there was a number scale, so 1 to 4. And this one mom said, my daughter was a 3 at the beginning of the year for all of these different standards, and she was a 3 at the end of the year for all these different standards. And my teacher said she made great progress. And the mom's like, how do I know she made great progress? Like, she's still a 3. So there's still some issues with some of the standards-based report cards. And parents are hungry for what they know, their own experience, which is A's, B's, and C's and D's. So they gravitate to wanting those because with the numbers, they just sort of attach grade letters to them. So that for us, and what we found is being really explicit about those different skills in how their child is mastering them, progressing them. Are they on grade level in math? I mean, they could be getting it an A in math, but not on grade level. So incorporating some of those kinds of different kinds of information for parents, we think would be quite powerful. And so we're getting another question. It appears that parents care about socio-emotional learning and peer pressure beyond grades. What are some ideas for sharing more information on those topics with parents? So yes, the parents first and foremost, and if you're a parent, you know you just want your child to be happy and successful. And I'd love to, I think Wendy Lopez Aflito, who's here with us, she oversees all of our seasonal campaigns and our content and our tips. So I'm gonna have Wendy answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Such an important one. So we are, as Biv said, laser focused on helping parents have a more accurate picture of their child's both academic and developmental progress. And so in addition to some of the tools that I'm going to share about grade level work, we have been working, we just released a new study called Developing Life Skills, and we can post that on the group, by the way, and have really found that, you know, as mentioned, parents care deeply. It's a very personal issue. And so in addition to sharing some insights as to how parents talk and feel about the topic, we've also created some resources for teachers, for organizations that are really meant to be program agnostic, so that you can have these conversations with parents in the context of your community, of local cultures, and you know, this is something that we are going to continue to work on because we know it is so important for parents.
So with Wendy, why don't you go ahead? I think we're one more question, and then I'm going to transition over to Wendy to continue out the rest of the presentation. So here's one last question. How do you tell a parent their child is not on grade level for spelling, reading, organization, quality of work in middle school? So that is the million-dollar question, and one that we are eager to partner with various teacher organizations like Edmodo, who can help from the teacher side figure out the best way to engage in those conversations. And we can help from the parent point of view come together. We have created a research-based tool called From Puzzle to Plan that we think will help facilitate the conversation that you just articulated, which we know is going to be really tricky. So we've got some very specific prompts and some language that we think engages not just the teacher, but also the parent and the student in a way that creates a safe environment for that conversation to happen. I mean, we heard from students in particular that they kind of know that they're not doing well, but they don't really have the ability to tell their parents because they don't want to disappoint them or get in trouble. And so we're trying to be responsive to all of the actors in a way that can facilitate a positive conversation. So we're happy to share from puzzle to plan with you somehow through Edmodo. And Wendy can also speak more to that in actually her session. So that's a terrific segue for Wendy. So Wendy, why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Bib, and to the Edmodo community. So building on some of the insights that Bib just shared, as she mentioned, we have been laser focused over the past 3 years on helping parents have a more accurate picture. We believe they deserve this, and they really want this, and really they need it, right, in order to be best advocates for their children's success and best support learning at home, and really best support the great work that you all are doing in the classroom day in and day out. So at Learning Heroes, we do this in a couple of ways. Everything that we create is guided by our parent mindset research. And so we have, for example, 3 seasonal campaigns that provide parents with concrete actions they can take depending on the time of school year, and resources that can support them in having a more accurate picture, and in working with you all, with the teacher. In addition to our seasonal campaigns, we are really excited to be sharing with you all a brand new tool, really a first of its kind digital tool that helps parents see how their child has learned foundational skills that we know are so critical for success this school year. And so for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to show you just a handful of slides to walk you through it, but really invite you to check out the full tool at bealearninghero.org. I've also posted the link on the group chat. We have some really great videos that also give a nice overview and are great outreach tools for parents, which we'll also post on the group. So what is the readiness check and how does it work? It is a simple, highly predictive tool. The student, K through 8 students, by the way, answer 3 to 5 short questions in math and reading. And immediately, parents get 3 main things. One, they get just a simple, fast, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes for the child to answer these 3 to 5 questions. But the parents get a gut check on how their child has learned some of the foundational skills in math and reading that are necessary to succeed in this school year. It is not a one and done. It is not an assessment. We are not framing it in that way. I'm sure as teachers, you'll be saying, 3 to 5 questions is not enough. It's meant to just be a gut check. We know parents are busy, they're on the go, and we really want to help them just have a better understanding of how their child is progressing with some of these skills, and really saw a gap and a need for a tool like this. So that's the first thing, they get that gut check. Then, what I'm most excited about is that they then get information on how to help. So they get information on how to support those very specific grade level skills in the context of their everyday lives. There's in-depth information about each question, how they might have answered, what might have went wrong, how you can support that skill, sort of at the kitchen table every night, in the context of everyday life. In addition to those tips, they also get connected to highly curated, free, easy to use, skill specific resources and activities. And that is the part that I think makes this tool so incredibly innovative. For parents on the go, yes, they can do a quick Google search and, I'm 3rd grade, but so much comes up. And it can be overwhelming. And so as we were developing this tool, did a ton of user testing, of focus groups, of research to really see what sort of the right grain size was. And what we found is that, having, again, these highly curated resources was incredibly useful and helpful to parents so that they can support their child in both learning and practicing these skills at home. So as teachers, you might be asking, well, how did you develop these 3 to 5 questions? We are incredibly excited to share that we worked with Jason Simba on the math side, the lead writer of the Common Core State Standards and founding partner at Student Achievement Partners. So he really helped guide and inform both the questions and sort of the pedagogy around the math content. On the reading side, we worked with Dr. Freddie Ebert, CEO and president of Text Project, an award-winning author and researcher. She's works with Scholastic and many other publishers, and she's really devoted her life's work and career around finding the right text for struggling readers in particular. So again, going to show you just a handful of slides, but you could, even check it out in real time as I'm going through these at bealearninghero.org. This is the landing page. Two simple instructions are for the child to click on the grade that they completed last year. So again, this is meant to test and see how they have learned grade level skills from the previous year that are necessary and we know they need in order to build on new skills this year. They can then select the subject in math, as you would select math or reading. And then this is an example of, problem one, for example, with in math. And so you'll see up at the top, there's a blue banner, which is really meant for the parents. And it lets the parent know to get a pencil and paper to ask their child to answer the 5 questions on their own. That's really important, right? We saw in some focus groups that parents' tendency, not surprising, is to lean in and sort of help their child. We want parents to allow their child to do it on their own, because the point is really to see, where they're struggling and where they're doing well. We also really prompt the parent to really not answer the question, but observe and ask the child to explain how they got their answer, how they really worked through it. And then finally, since this is all about helping parents have an accurate picture and really understand what is expected of their child year by year, we let the parent know what the specific skill is that's being covered. So that's at the top, and that's consistent throughout the tool. On the left-hand side, you'll notice that there's an Espanol button. This is a bilingual English and Spanish tool. We modeled sort of best practice around supporting English language learners. So if you were to click on that, you would see the problem and the instructions appear in Spanish. That is what's called, you might be familiar with this from state tests and other assessments, it's what's called a stacked translation, and that supports the English language learner to see it and sort of toggle in between the English and the Spanish. What we saw in focus groups and what we know from speaking with many of our partners, and even as we piloted the tool, is that while children, especially in the younger years, who might still be their native language might still be Spanish, they might be actually learning these concepts for the first time in English, in this country. So it's helpful to them to be able to toggle back and forth, and it's the purpose of the stacked translation. So after answering the 5 questions, then you get to the results page. And this is where, the child would hand it off to the parent, and the results are really intended more for the parent. At the top, you'll see just a notification for the parent to see how many questions their child got wrong or right. Really want to stress that we tested the language around delivering the news, and there was a question around how you tell a parent that their child's not on grade level. Such an important question, and we know, we tested this, that if it's too harsh, parents will just shut down, and they told us that. And so again, because this is meant to just be a gut check and it's not a one and done assessment, it's really important that it's delivered in a way that is sensitive and that is strength-based, right? This is really about empowering parents with the information they need to support at home. So the parent in this case gets prompted that their child needs more support with 3rd grade math skills. You'll see at the top, really want to call this out, there is a button that says practice the skill. And that's where they get connected to those highly curated resources, which I'll show in a moment. In addition, on this page, if you were to scroll down, you would see the right answer versus perhaps what your child answered. And you also get that in-depth information about how your child might have worked through the problem. When we did focus groups with both parents and teachers, and with parents and students, and their child and teachers as well, what we heard from teachers was that in-depth information about the skill, about the question, was actually really helpful to them as well. So while this is intended at this point to be primarily a parent engagement tool, right? So a tool that you would, hopefully promote and share with your parents, it could also be a helpful tool for you in the classroom, particularly as you're looking to share with parents, how they can support these specific skills at home. So after getting the results, again, you could hit for each of the problems, practice the skill, and that's where you would get directed to that highly curated list. Really want to stress again, these are meant to be really support the parents, so that if the parent themselves can't teach the skill, there are videos, there are examples, and these are what's called both learn and practice resources. In addition to seeing the results and the in-depth information and the resources, an important call to action for us was to really encourage parents to be proactive in partnering with you all, with the teacher, and sharing these results. Again, while this is not a formative assessment, it can provide you, particularly at the beginning of the year, an important, like now in the middle of the year, important insight as to where students might need additional support. So parents can either print the results or email them. They also then, you'll see down below, get connected to additional resources to support learning at home. So that was the math. I'm just going to quickly go through the reading because it's a similar format. At the top, again, that blue banner provides parents with information they need to know. So in the case of reading, it just gives an approximate amount of time for that at grade level for the child to read the passage. They are about 2 minutes for each passage, and it's not intended to rush the parent or rush the student, but just to give parents, again, a sense of what that grade level reading might look like. There are 3 short questions in the ELA versus 5. And again, we tested that, and in working with our content experts, really found that 3 was the right size for the reading, given the amount of time for the passage. And as we worked with Dr. Ebert, one thing that she always stressed to us was that getting through the passage alone is almost a question in and of itself, because unfortunately we know that so many of our students are really struggling with their own reading stamina. And so, even for a parent to notice, can my child get through this passage in this amount of time, is an important observation. Similar to the math, you can toggle to the Spanish, and since this is about looking at reading in English, there's a Spanish glossary, again, following some best practice with similar to state tests. So we provide the Spanish glossary for keywords that the child would need in order to understand the passage. For the reading, there are the 3 questions. The first question covers word knowledge. The second covers ideas and details. And the third is really an integration of knowledge and ideas to see how students have captured the main idea. And so in the last question, this is just an example to give you a sense of what the reading looks like. You have to click and highlight the main idea from the passage. Wanted to give you a look at what some of that in-depth information is for the reading. Obviously looks a little bit different than for the math, but we just give concrete examples of how you can support reading in the context in a comprehensive way, not in a sort of a skill and drill way, being sort of the difference with reading, but we really want to highlight specific topics, encourage, in addition to those grade level topics and reading for knowledge, really stress the importance of understanding your child's grade level reading, but also the importance of stretch texts and really, pushing your child sometimes and in having the confidence to, really read. To learn about the world around them, which we know is so important. Also, providing different kinds of tips around keeping a reading journal. And really, again, these are ways that parents and families can come together to really create that love of reading and love of learning at home. And then finally, similar to the math, we direct parents to grade level resources to support reading at home. So with that, want to make sure we get time for questions and ideas. We are so excited to, after having launched this year, actually we launched for the first time Readiness Check at EdModoCon this past year. We have been getting great feedback from partners, from parents, from teachers, from educators, and wanted to share just a couple of ideas of how, hopefully you might be able to use the resource as part of your ongoing family outreach. We know that resources and tools that sort of are pushed from the top down don't work, and so we really designed this with thinking about the context of what's happening and moments between parents and teachers. So for example, you could post this as a parent resource on Edmodo, on your Edmodo group, on your class website, on your portal. You could list it as a resource in take-home materials, whether that be digital newsletters or print. On bealearninghero.org, we have a great flyer that can be used and that promotes and shares a bit about the tool. You can also use it, and we've seen as we were piloting it last year before launching, some of our partners such as Denver Public Schools and Flamboyant Foundation, Ed Navigator, among others, Unidos US, which is formerly National Council La Raza. All of these folks were able to really integrate it nicely within the context of ongoing parent education events, family workshops, family visits. So you can imagine introducing this during a conversation, during a family visit or, at school. And again, while it's not meant to replace anything that you're doing in the classroom in terms of an assessment, from a family and from a family engagement perspective, I think for teachers, the main message is that this really, it connects you to those resources to support learning at home. We've gotten feedback from some of our pilot partners that, in particular, while this is designed for all parents, it's especially helpful for outreach to new families in your community, or who might be new to the community or even the country, whose students and children might not have a long paper trail, right? And so they're new to your class, and here you are left sort of figuring out where they are. And so it's just another gut check to see how they're doing and how they are progressing with these important grade level skills. So with that, I would love to turn it over to questions, either questions about the tool and or any ideas, thoughts on how you might be able to use this tool as part of your parent and family outreach.
So Wendy, we do actually have a question for you.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so if an administrator wants to introduce this tool to the parents and teachers at their school, what type of preparation might they need to use it successfully with the students? Fantastic question.
Yeah, fantastic question.
Mhm.
So we really designed it to be quite turnkey, and we've tested the instructions and sort of the prompts throughout, and we've refined it and tried to make it really simple. So ideally, it is intended to be a turnkey tool, but definitely want to keep in touch with folks. This is the first year that we have launched this nationally, and so in some cases with, for example, with Denver Public Schools, with large organizations who really want to roll it out in a meaningful way, we have done webinars, and we do have sort of train the trainer sessions that we could share with you. And so anything we can do to support that, we're happy to do that.
Great. And there was actually one other question that came in as we were transitioning over to Wendy that I can take. Another really thoughtful question. Will redesigning the report cards to reflect effort versus academic achievement improve parental understanding and involvement? And I think that's a great question for this community to grapple with. We know that parents perceive report cards to mean not just effort and progress, but also grade level mastery. So, I think report cards reflect something super important. Obviously, progress, participation, engagement, all of that matters greatly from a learning perspective. But what we would love to see is some grade level indicators included on the report card potentially. And as the other thoughtful question came through, helping teachers be able to explain what is embedded in that report card so that parents and teachers have the same definition of what the role of that report card is, and parents have access to what teachers already know. They've got all this diagnostic information, dibbles or iReady or map or Lexile, you name it. There's a lot of data and information that teachers have on a daily basis that I think could benefit parents. So I think that's a to be continued question, and a really excellent one. So we have a couple more questions that I'll tackle here. So what kind of, it's being typed as we speak. Okay, here we go. What kind of response do you typically get when parents have taken these quizzes with their students? Thoughts on implementing this exercise tool with parents and students mid-year? So Wendy, to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've gotten that feedback in a couple of ways. With the focus groups, we really saw, and Bib talked a little bit about this, that there's a large portion of parents who are problem solvers, right? And so they immediately, after seeing their child work through the questions, and oftentimes struggling through some of the questions because they're on grade level, they're hard, right? And so they're rigorous, but parents were really encouraged when they saw that they were getting connected to resources. And so that's why we really, again, we tweaked and refined the language so that parents know upfront, sort of hang in there, because you are going to get connected to resources that can support your child at home. And again, also just really staying true to what we've seen in the research, that parents want the best for their child. They hold themselves really deeply responsible, and we want to position or sort of frame this through the lens of there is something you can do, not scare them.
Great, and we have another question. I noticed that for the math assessment that the answer centers on one way to solve the problem. Are you currently thinking of ways to include other methods of working through a particular problem to get a solution?
Yeah.
When there's a little bit more. With Common Core, it seems like focus is more about the process and less about the answer getting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason would completely agree. And so I wanted to just show you a couple of slides, but if you go onto the tool, and you'll see under the results for every single problem, you can hit see the solution. And Jason has done, I think, a beautiful job of really breaking down the different ways your child might have worked through that problem. And in fact, I think this is just an indicator of how passionate he was about this project. You'll see child drawings, for example, of different ways that they might have worked through, and some are from his own children, actually, and some are from students. And so, couldn't agree more that that is critical, and why at the beginning we really encourage parents to observe how their child is working through the problem. I also think that that just brings up another really important point, which is that technology can only solve for so much, right? As Bib mentioned, we know that parents trust you all, a teacher, so much. And so this is where, and why we're so excited to be working with Edmodo, because we think that there's such power in a tool like this in combination with meaningful, concrete, candid conversations between, parents and teachers.
Great. And so we have a final question, which is perfect timing. Just really quickly, can this be implemented mid-year?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. So we saw, we launched it officially as part of back to school because we, in our user testing, actually really heard from parents that they share. We initially, quite honestly, we're going to launch it in the summer, but parents really shared that a couple of weeks and right at the beginning of the school year is when they would want the information. And so we wanted to be responsive to that. But absolutely, this can be used. And I think, for where we are now, which is part of the timing of this session, sort of mid-year, report cards have come out. We're about to have a long break. It's a nice 10-minute tool that you can do with your child just to check in and see how they have learned those foundational skills.
Great. Well, with that, I think we can conclude tonight's live stream. Thank you all for joining us on this lovely Tuesday evening. We really appreciate you being with us and asking such fantastic questions. Please do check out our website, bealearninghero.org, for the readiness check as well as all of our research. And we're eager to hear from you. So please do send us an email with your thoughts, suggestions, and comments. And if you can share the research, even better. So thank you so much and have a great night.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.